All right, I want to do just a really short video on why I use and why I love my overarm dust guard, blade guard. Because I have this thing and I use it for everything, every cut, even dados, doesn't matter. So when I got this saw, it was right before riving knives became kind of the in thing, and essentially every saw has to have one. But when I got this in 2004 or so, riving knives were not on standard Western cabinet saws. And it was not until like a couple years after I bought mine, of course, that they became available and or standard. This particular saw does not have a riving knife. Now I could buy an upgrade kit for it, but I just never did. They're pretty expensive. I think they're like $800 or something. So I decided not to do that. And instead I have that guy right there, which I really love, these little splitters. But the reason I bring this up is because if I had a riving knife, I potentially could get a guard that goes onto the riving knife and has dust collection. However, I would still run into a lot of situations where I don't want to use those. And so this is why I never have actually wanted to purchase one of those. There's a company out there that makes, I think it's like a shark guard or something, that actually makes just like what I'm talking about, an aftermarket guard, but it attaches to the splitter and it surrounds the blade. Now, if I had that kind of setup, I maybe wouldn't even know about this, but because I don't, I always felt like this was, going to be the best way for me to get the best dust extraction and be safe. It's amazing. But I'm really happy that I have this particular one. I know that it's so nice to have it that I don't know what I would do without it. So let me kind of go over some of the benefits. Now, right off the top, the first thing people say is if you have a riving knife guard, you can't use it if you use a dado set. Okay, so this is why a lot of the European saws, sliding saws and all that stuff, they don't have dado stack capabilities because of that. They don't want you to use the tool without a guard. Well, in the United States, when these saws come over, there's always an issue with people want that flexibility. Well, I don't have a sliding saw right now, and in my cabinet shop, this is what I use daily because I always use stacked dado sets. So the idea of me getting some sort of a guard that attaches to what, let's say, a riving knife or a splitter of some sort is not really practical for me. So this guy has the ability to be used, obviously, and then pulled out of the way, or pushed out of the way, I should say, when you're not using it. Now, adjusting this with one hand is not as easy as with two. But if you notice, it doesn't touch the table, so that obviously I can raise it up as high as I want or as low as I want. Now, there's a major advantage to this. And that major advantage is that I can use it with a dado set. Now, when you're using it with a dado set, obviously you're not going to be getting the dust extraction, right? Because the dado is not going through the wood, so you're not getting that dust spitting up. But what you are getting is that protection from the blade. Let's say you're running a dado and you're pushing it through, you're still not going to be putting your hand anywhere near that blade. So, most likely, the way I use my guard is that I'm not going to be pushing the wood through when I make dados, and when it comes out the other end, my hand's away from it because this guard is there. And then when it comes out the other end, it still picks up the dust that would escape right here, and it picks up a lot of that dust. So using with a dado set is phenomenal. Even when I'm rabbiting and I've got my fence all the way up against, the dado set, I can still put this guy down And even though it's not going down as far as it would be, you know, all the way down normally, it stops there. It's still going to help get any dust that escapes. So I'm still getting the benefit of the guard. Okay, so that's with the dado set. Let's talk about it from the standpoint of using a crosscut sled, because in using a crosscut sled, which is pretty much the standard for my shop on every job, cross-cutting all the parts, I can use this and it stays up like that, and my crosscut sled goes under it. It might be a little bit higher than that. Whatever the height of your fence is how high I bring this up. So when I'm cross-cutting with the table saw sled, I have this thing. It's getting a lot of that dust that would be spewing out right into my face, and it's going right into the dust collector. Now, also, when you're doing that, there have been times where things are flying off the blade. Let's say you're cutting, I mean, this is just one thing that is pretty ferocious when you cut it. Wine racks. If you've ever made a wine rack, you know what it's like when you cut those to size. Those pieces are flying all around. Those little pieces that you're cutting off from all the little grid, that wine rack. I'm talking about the diagonal shaped wine racks. And when you're cutting those, you have lots of parts flying. And this thing completely covers up that blade, so those pieces aren't going to be coming out of there. So you've got a lot of safety there. It's literally catching whatever's flying around. And of course you still want to wear glasses, but really, you know, with this on there, it's just not as important to wear glasses on every single cut. But clearly when you're cutting that kind of stuff, you definitely want to. But on every day, you know, using this, although I need my glasses for seeing pretty well, it's not so important with this guard down so low. I'm not concerned about anything flying out of it. Now, there's a few other things that I really like about this particular setup, and that is it hooks to the far end of my machine here, my saw, because if you have this going to the ceiling, that prohibits me from having the ability to use this as a big assembly table. A lot of times I'm standing stuff up and it's really big, because you can, when I bought this new, it had options for ceiling mount or the standard cabinet saw mount. So I went ahead and went with the standard because I want this whole area to be completely free of anything. Now, when you don't want to use this guy, it's really cool because you can take this and you can retract it if you want to, or you don't need to retract it. All you do is you just flip this switch here and the thing is free to move now. I can take it and just swing it right out of the way. Now, if you don't retract it, think about that. It's obviously going, you know, pretty far out there, but because I've got quite a bit of room, I mean, look at all that, you know, free space now that I have. So generally, if I swing it out of the way, I retract it, only because I know when I'm swinging it out of the way, it's because I'm building stuff here and I don't want anything to be in the way. So I have this set up pretty well so that it goes just 90 degrees and it can clear this guy just like that. Now also what's nice about this is that you can tighten up the rigidity of it. So if it's loose, you know, if the spring on it, you can tighten that up and make it tighter or looser. So that's really cool. But you can see how it goes 90 degrees to my cabinet saw. And now this entire workspace is open for business. I don't have to worry about it. You can also take this off super easy. So if you needed to actually remove it for whatever reason, or if you had two tools, you wanted to switch between tools, it's so easy. All you do is just lift it right off of that and you're free to go. This guy right here is just friction fit right on there. So that's nothing. Take that off and you're good to go. If you ever want to, you know, have the dust collector on, but let's say I'm doing an operation and I'm not using this, I can go ahead and just shut this off. And now there's no dust, no air that's being wasted in the arm there. But, you know, normally it's fully on and it's and it's sucking. So I've got my big 6-inch down spiral ductwork there, and then it goes to a 4-inch reducer. And this particular guard, I mean, it pulls really well. In fact, I cut some plexiglass the other day. If you saw that video where I was making the shaper fence, at the end I cut some plexiglass, and that plexiglass is 1/16 of an inch thick. And as I cut it, when I was done with the cut, I went and shut the vacuum off, the dust collector, and I noticed that I heard something, and it went click, and it was the extra, the scrap piece of plexiglass was literally sucked up into the vacuum of the tube there, and it actually lifted up and was pulled up and got stopped only by the body of the guard. And when the vacuum slowed down and it wasn't sucking anymore, it dropped the plexiglass on the table. So that's how strong this thing is, and that's, I mean, there we go. I don't really ever lock this guy down, but if you can. I don't ever see the need to do that. So this guy right here, this is adjustable, as I was saying. You can change the angle and all that stuff. The first thing I did when I got this was to modify the mounting on it, because the normal 50-inch or 52-inch, whatever you want to call it, table saw length right here was fine, but I noticed that it could actually go longer. So what I did was I added a piece right here. So this is about 5 inches wide. I added this guy so that I could get 5 inches more rip capacity, when cross capacity while using that. So if I want to, I could take my rip fence all the way down here and actually get, quite a bit more than the saw says you can get, and still be on the track. But also I can cross cut, 60 something inches by having that extension on there. So what I also did was, when I extended it, it made it so this piece wouldn't go so close to the blade, but you don't really want to put this thing right up next to the blade because it's going to be too close to the blade. If you're really that close, I would rather not use it because it's pretty close and it might be too close. But I can rip 1 inch with this, and it's no problem. If I get below 1 inch, I feel like it's a little bit tight, and I would rather, take it and remove it. For those few operations that I do that. Normally, I'm not ripping less than 1 inch, and that's pretty rare to go less, though. But there are times when you do go less, and obviously you have to remove it at that point. But as you can see, it gets pretty close, and that's pretty darn nice right there. So I really like having that extra 5 inches. It's really cool. Now this, I'm trying to think of anything else I could add on this. This thing, the way that it mounts is super simple. I mean, obviously it's got this bracket here, super simple. There's not a lot to it. This guy right up here actually bolts underneath the saw, and there's tension on it. So this actually creates that tension. When you have this thing hanging like that, it wants to drop down. And with these here, it's literally keeping that from happening. So it's not only would it be putting a lot of pressure here, wherever you're mounting it, if you didn't have those tension poles, but with those tension poles, it's literally propping this end up. So this is absolutely totally stable. There is no deflection in this guy, the way that it is designed. I mean, Excalibur, they did a phenomenal job designing this thing. So where can you get this if you wanted to buy one? Well, unfortunately, this, as it sits here, is not sold today. You cannot get this unless you buy it aftermarket, and trust me, they are hard to find. I will tell you that this guy right here, if you wanted to buy it, you're going to have to buy it from SawStop, because they actually bought Excalibur, and Excalibur now sells, or SawStop now sells this exact one, but it's black to match the SawStop brand color. And I went to Rockler the other day just to check on a couple things, and they had one on display, and I wanted to see what the action was. And I was actually disappointed because the movement of it was not very good at all. So I'm not really sure if they changed anything on that. It looks like everything's identical, but this one moves much better. And again though, moving it with one hand, it's not as good. Moving it with two hands, it's better. But I was a little bit disappointed, so it could be that it was just a floor model. I mean, you know how that goes. Sometimes floor models are that way, but I don't think that's the case. When I saw this on display in a place called Eagle Tools, this is where I bought my cabinet saw from in Los Angeles, they had this on display, and you know, I remember it worked flawlessly. So I think maybe it's just that it's just not as good of a design. Maybe they changed something on it, but who knows. In any case, it's super nice, and like I said, this thing has been, I've been using this since day one, since I got my cabinet saw. And you know, it is an expensive add-on, but trust me, when you're using it like this, I mean, even if you were a hobbyist and you were just doing a little thing here and there, you don't want that dust flying in your face. I don't care if you're wearing a dust mask or what. You know, I see these, you know, videos on YouTube, and these guys are ripping this, you know, exotic wood or, you know, whatever type of wood it is. I mean, you can get really bad allergies and sicknesses from breathing this nasty dust from exotic woods or even native woods. You can get sick from this stuff. So you don't want to breathe this stuff if you can help it. Now, obviously, that's one other thing, but the other thing also is that you don't want your fingers to get, you know, near that blade. So as much as you know, you want that dust collection, but you also want the protection from the blade too. So there's, you know, obviously it's both. And this one, because they used a 4-inch dust port connection to a 3-inch or 3.5, this guy's a big hose. That's not like a little shop vac hose. That thing's pulling some air. And I mean, even though it's split into two, I mean, obviously the way that this is designed, it's really pulls pretty good. In fact, when it sometimes pulls up my throat plate. It'll do this with my throat plate. If I drop this down, it'll actually suck up the throat plate. So clearly there's a lot of CFM pulling through, and it does a great job. So let's just like look at the saw, because you know, when I'm done doing operations, I always like kind of take a look and see what's left over, and there's just nothing left over. If you come down here, look at how clean this whole area is. Nothing is here on the floor, nothing in front of me. I mean, that's awesome. And you know what also? There's nothing on me. So my whole front, my clothing, I don't have any sawdust on me, which, you know, that's a good sign. You're getting it all picked up. So it does a really good job. Let me cut some stuff and let me show you what it's like with this so that you can get a good idea. Now I'm actually going to be cutting some 1 3/16 thick solid ultralight MDF. You can see right there where the gullet is. So that's, you know, about where I run this. Okay, we go ahead and run this in. Okay, so I just ran that piece through, and so look at the cast iron. I mean, tell me what you think about that. So I've got I'm serious. That's what I have. Okay, So pretty cool, pretty cool. I don't have anything on me, right? So there's nothing that is shooting out, not even at the end of the blade, which that's generally where you would get it, especially when you have a dust guard. Even if you have a dust guard, at the end of the cut, a lot of times you're going to get a little bit of that spit out, but still nothing. So you've got complete coverage. And you know, the one thing I will say is that when you're using this, you want to make sure that you have this as low as you can on the workpiece, but you can have it a little bit higher. It's just the more effective you'll be if it's lower. So I can't stress this enough. You should try to buy one if you can. I don't know if these are adaptable to all contractor saws. Obviously cabinet saws they are, but I don't see how you couldn't use this with a contractor saw, you know, one with an open base, because it's the same mechanism here is the same. So I don't really know why this wouldn't be used for pretty much every table saw out there. If it has an outfeed or, you know, this extension table, you should be able to utilize it. Obviously the way that you mount it might be a little bit different, but you should be able to utilize it. So I would encourage anybody out there to go grab one of these. And I mean, just really, you'll thank me, I'm telling you. And I don't really see any videos. I don't know of anybody talking about these. I just don't see it. So I thought maybe somebody would like to know about them, you know? Maybe they don't even know they exist. I'm noticing a lot of people are using these because you have to have something for OSHA requirements. You have to have collection from above and or safety from it. So it's either or. I'm not really sure if it's both, or I would just assume you need to have it. Okay, one downfall is you do lose sight of the blade at some points as you're working with this. You will lose sight of the blade. I will tell you, some people operating these do not like the fact that you lose sight of the blade at some point during your operation. Now, how many times will I say you're losing sight of the blade, but it's not like it's a forever thing. And let me tell you something. You know, the idea that you want to be able to see the blade for your comfort, okay, I get that. But there are times when, you know, every single operation you're doing, let's say you're using a shaper, you cover up that blade, right? And the floor is completely clean. I mean, literally, I have leaves from opening up the garage when the wind's blowing 60 miles an hour. The leaves come in, but there's no sawdust on the floor. There's nothing on the floor, and it's amazing what you can do with good dust collection. So I don't know, I would just like be really excited to work in an environment like this. If maybe you can't see the blade for a little bit of the time while you're using it, I mean, I guess I would take that, because, you know, you're getting all this other benefit from it. So I don't know, any type of a cover obviously covers up the blade, but they make this so that when you're using it, in my opinion, I can look straight down on it and I can actually see the cut line when I'm using my crosscut sled, which is really cool. So the crosscut sled goes here. This obviously has to be centered in the blade. But what ends up happening is, as you look down, your eyes split here, and I'm able to see the cut line exactly where my line is, so I can go slowly and I can make sure that I'm cutting right to my mark. So that to me is phenomenal. Even with all this on here, the way that it works is really cool, and I just love it. But so I said short video. I'm going to try to edit this, but it's been 24 minutes. So if you have any questions, if you're enjoying my content, you know, obviously my channel's based around custom cabinets and woodworking. Sometimes I'll put in another video just to kind of help, you know, around the house with something. But if you like the content, please subscribe and let me know, you know, what you guys would like to see. I do love to take people's comments, and like some people say they wanted to learn more about let's say the shaper, and so I made a video on in complete build of the fence because some people were asking about that, or various other things. So whatever you guys would like to see, just let me know. I would love to hear that and just get positive feedback. And I appreciate it. But if there's anything that you think of, just let me know. All right, thanks again, and we'll talk to you later.